Okay, we're ready for our next speaker before lunch. We have Lili Peng from Biogen, and her talk today is entitled A Data-Driven Approach to External Innovation for a Biotech Company. Please welcome Lili Peng.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here in New York today. I'm currently the Scientific Ecosystems Analytics Lead for External Innovation at Biogen, and my presentation is on the way. One second. Let's do it. I'm not sure. Okay, great. So before I delve into the data-driven part of this presentation, I just want to give a brief background on Biogen and what we're all about. So as you all know, our mission is clear. We're pioneers in neuroscience. Biogen discovers, develops, and delivers worldwide innovative medicines for people with serious neurological and neurodegenerative diseases. We're approximately a company of about 7,500 people, and we're very scientifically driven. Of the total number of employees, where approximately 1/5 is PhD level scientists. And we focus mostly on improving the lives of approximately 1 billion patients affected by neurological diseases. And this ranges from Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, and some of the less common forms of neurological diseases such as progressive supranuclear palsy and SMA. We have about 27 assets in the pipeline, 5 of which are in phase 3, and about 12 are in phase 2. And recently, as you all know, we submitted aducanumab for regulatory filing with the FDA. So we also focus on disease areas such as ophthalmology, and we acquired a company called Nightstar Therapeutics, which focuses on rare retinal diseases using gene therapy. And so we develop our business actually through a two-prong approach, which is internally through our clinical development programs, as well as externally through these acquisitions. So this talk will focus on how do we grow the business of a biotech company. And this concept is not just limited to a biotech company, but also to any kind of company. The framework for external innovation and business development at Biogen can be described as a two-prong approach. One is the conventional business development. So this is just conventional search and evaluation of assets, licensing, mergers and acquisitions, and R&D collaborations. The question driving this is what companies are developing late-stage preclinical assets and clinical assets in neurological diseases. So this is late-stage all the way up to phase 3. And then we use evaluation criteria of assets, such as what disease indications, and these disease indications would either fall into our core or emerging disease areas, what the mechanism of action is, the modality, the target, the country of development, and the development phase. And the second part of external innovation is more of the, if you will, the more creative side. And this is not so much clinically focused, but more on the discovery and preclinical space. So this is the more, if you will, creative external R&D strategy. And the approach here is to identify what startup companies are working on developing or discovering an asset, and are these startup companies being funded through venture capital firms or incubators? And then if we can find them, then we can partner along with the VC firm to help and nurture to grow the company. We also are interested in academic partnerships specifically what are key opinion leaders in academia working in a particular neurological disease, and if we can partner with them to establish relationships with them. So this overall, we use a topic-driven search on established and emerging topics in science and medicine. So some of the more established topics could include the core and emerging disease areas, whether the modality is an antibody or an antibody-drug conjugate or small molecule. But then there are also more emerging topics in medicine, such as the microbiome, gene therapy, and cell therapy, as well as digital therapeutics. Now, so these questions that let me rewind. So these questions that I presented are relatively open-ended and exploratory in nature. And these questions are, if I'll take a step back, and are equivalent to the exploratory business questions or lifestyle questions that have been addressed by technological products in other markets. So if you're asking the question, what companies are developing preclinical and clinical assets in neurological diseases, that's like asking what exciting locations would I be interested in traveling. The open-ended nature of these questions are equivalent. It's just that in the travel industry, you already have some of the technological products developed to fulfill these questions or answer these questions. If you have a question focused on what neuromuscular disorders have assets that are in clinical development, that's like asking what restaurants, if you're a foodie, what restaurants do you want to try out and expand your taste buds? What venture capital firms in Europe are funding startup companies, that's like asking, well, if you're looking for VC firms in a particular geographic area, then you're also looking for, okay, are there, say, gym classes in New York City that you're interested in? So what all these tech products have in common is that they rely on searching of data from multiple disparate sources to provide answers through like a one-stop shop. The last question on what are emerging hot topics in science and medicine that Biogen could be interested in, that's also, that is more, there's some predictive analytics going on, but I'm aware that there are, Stitch Fix and Trunk Club by the Nordstrom company, they also use AI algorithms to predict what fashion trends, if you're interested in, if you were to input a set of parameters for your particular body type. So now let's revisit the question about how do we grow the business of a biotech company. It becomes more specific about how do we use data to grow the business of a biotech company. So these questions that I had just listed on the two slides prior, what companies are developing preclinical and clinical assets in CNS? Currently, how this is being conducted in external innovation in my group is that we have a search and evaluation team who are searching using competitive intelligence databases manually. So if you use Priceline to book your trip here to New York City. Now imagine taking a step back and searching from all of the the airlines individually and manually to find your trip to New York City. So imagine doing that, and this is what the team is doing now. And then after they conduct that search, and this could be like a 3 to 5 day process, and after they spend that time just mining the data, they generate specific dashboards and visualizations containing key information on the assets from the databases that they have to extract. So if you're looking through 4 databases, some of them have duplicate information, you have to remove quadruplicate records of information, and that's the process right now. The future state of this capability is, or the envisioned future state, is to automate the searching of these assets from the multiple databases. So you eliminate the need to have to search widely and broadly for the same asset. And you can do this at a higher volume and velocity to cover greater breadth and depth of data. And similarly, if you're interested in searching for VC firms, we use this database called Crunchbase. So similarly, this process is a very manual process. If we didn't have access to Crunchbase and if we want to search for VC firms in a particular geographic area, you have to actually look through the websites of all the VC firms and then click on the section about which companies they fund, and then click on the websites for all of those companies to see which assets are they working on for a particular disease area. So we want to automate the searching of assets, but we also want to automate the generations of these dashboards and visualizations. And finally, for the emerging hot topics part, the current state is that if we're interested in a company that is working in gene therapy, the information gets shared through the word of mouth and networking. So someone tells you about a company, and then you hear about it through this one-off conversation in the hallway. So if we can apply artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms in order to identify these emerging hot topics, and perhaps before they even reach word-of-mouth networking, then this is also a more rigorous way to identify the topics that are relevant for Biogen. So I will say that the first two types of capabilities are more of descriptive analytics, and the last part is more predictive. And I'll go more into this in detail later. So I'll discuss data. If we leverage the data properly, we can have a tremendous impact on external innovation. The process, we can have an impact on the process by increasing the efficiency of search and evaluation to more time spent on evaluation. So if we can harmonize all the databases in a one-stop shop, then we don't have to search all the data databases, not in parallel, but in series. But now we do it in parallel, so we can stay like 3 to 5 days of time with just using a free text search, and we can generate a visualization within a matter of 30 seconds to a minute. And we can also develop a systematic process to identify point of contacts for venture capital firms and external engagements. So Biogen external innovation, we are comprised of scientific entrepreneurs that are located in Europe, the UK, and the US West Coast. So if we can have our global innovation leads identify VCs in their respective geographical areas, then we can use this method to expand the company's global footprint. And I'll also mention that we can have an impact on the capabilities. So these capabilities, like dashboards and visualizations, heavily rely on the different types of data that we're using in the platform. So not all, I'll just touch upon by saying that not all data sets are created equal. Some are more structured than others, and that makes some types of data are more amenable to descriptive analytics, and some are more amenable to predictive analytics. But you can't treat a data set and say, okay, I have a set of data, let's do some AI on this. It's not that simple, right? So the capabilities, because we have to treat each type of data out of like a case-by-case scenario, then this also begets the need for new IT infrastructure, cloud-based solutions, and data lakes and other tools to address the data problem. And because a data problem is not the same thing as a capability problem. And I would say that this is a project that is a moving target, because you would have you're discovering the data at the same time that you're discovering the technology that could address the data problem. So the process and the capabilities are evolving with each other as we move along this implementation project. And the business gets impacted because the process and the capabilities get impacted. So we enable Biogen to become more data-driven. It's been shown by a PricewaterhouseCoopers study that companies that are more data-driven are more productive overall. And then altogether, we enable the company to make better and more well-informed strategic decisions. And through the searching of assets, we can identify companies in a more rapid and systematic way to introduce products in the pipeline that are compatible with our disease areas, priorities, and scientific strategy. Altogether, we enable Biogen to become an influencer and sculptor of the neuroscience community. So now let's revisit this question. How do we grow the business of a biotech company? How do we optimally exploit data through analytics to grow the business of a biotech company? So in a collaboration with an AI and machine learning company based in New York City, Intelligencia, we developed NeuroInsight, which is an internal Biogen advanced analytics and machine learning platform specifically developed for identifying near and long-term external innovation opportunities. So the capabilities include automated generation of the landscapes from all the competitive intelligence databases. And it also generates specific visualizations to enable business development partnering, as well as identification of emerging topics from a variety of scientific literature, funding, patents, and clinical trial studies. I won't just show you the platform specifically, but I can describe on a high level what the descriptive analytics and predictive analytics offered by this solution is. So for the descriptive analytics, we search competitive intelligence databases. These are just commercially available ones from companies like Clarivate Analytics, Informa, Elsevier. And then we aggregate the data from the competitive intelligence databases. These are large tabular formats of structured text. And then we transform all that and harmonize it into one canonical data model into NeuroInsight. And then the output is generating these dashboards and visualizations in different functional sections, broken down by the disease area or the modality or mechanism of actions or the geography. So shown here, the output takes form of bubble plots, column graphs, geographical maps, pie charts, and so forth. And these visualizations present is a visual way of communicating and informing the end user what companies do we want to partner with, what disease areas should we partner with. That's the intent of these visualizations. As for the predictive analytics, we search meaningfully across major public data sources. So we use PubMed, Google Scholar, and NIH Reporter. This is a funding source. Cordis, this is a funding source in Europe. Google Patents and WIPO for intellectual property, as well as clinicaltrials.gov. So it's interesting that you notice all of these are public sources, because for the proprietary sources that we use in the descriptive analytics, all of them were from companies that had the fine print. None of this data can be used for AI machine learning. So there are caveats to data access. And since these are publicly available, we could use them, or any end user can use them for whatever purpose. And then we use expertly curated life science ontologies based off of drugs, disease, and indications and targets from sources like medical subject heading, experimental factor ontology, gene ontology, the UniPro. So these are established vocabularies for drugs, diseases, gene targets, and protein targets. And we search for search for information from the public sources, and then use intelligencia's algorithms to identify areas of innovation based off of Biogen's areas of interest. So how do you define what are Biogen's areas of interest? So now, these are internal documents that are also free-form text that we use to weigh against this corpus of information searched from the public sources, and we identify, okay, based off of what are the genes and diseases and targets that Biogen is most interested in, can we identify genes and indications and mechanisms of action from the public sources that would be of most interest to us? And how do you identify which ones are most? How do you quantify that? Is you search for the number of publications, the academic investigators, what's their H factor, I-10 index, the investment levels and funding from companies for a particular topic, the number of patents, the number of clinical trials, and other factors. So these are questions. So all this generates an output of the types of genes and indications, also the gene and indication relationships, as well as the mechanism of actions to identify what is there a trending activity based off of like an uptick in the number of publications or an uptick in patents or clinical trials for various topics that are weighed against Biogen's disease and Biogen's disease roadmaps. And then most importantly, we can use this information to identify areas that could be of interest to Biogen, but we haven't yet pursued yet. So now I'll pivot a bit and I'll talk about how the software implementation through the project with Intelligencia has been going on. So I'll highlight why this is important because so I'm the analytics lead of external innovation, and I report to the VP, our head, and I also work alongside my colleagues in search and evaluation and the scientific entrepreneurs. And I also, okay, so I work with them to collect their feedback in the form of user requirements of what they want the platform to fulfill. And I'm also in close contact with the lead project manager at Intelligencia. And I work with the Intelligencia team to develop the SaaS platform, NeuroInsight, that the external innovation team then uses to conduct their search and evaluation and landscaping activities. At the same time, I'm also in contact closely with the research and development IT, as well as the Biogen library resources. So the research development IT, and that's an IT department internal to Biogen, and they oversee the IT project management internally from the Biogen side. And the Biogen library resources also provide me access to the different proprietary databases for competitive intelligence information. And the department also has a strong working relationship with corporate development. So this is corporate strategy, business development, the research development team, as well as commercial operations. So this becomes a multi-stakeholder internally and externally to develop this platform. So this is what the ideal state looks like, but this is actually what the reality is. So everybody has a different understanding of what software implementation is, and it can be very much you're blindfolded and you're trying to figure out what is this platform looking like, and and everyone understands one aspect of it, but there is no one in this process, this setup that understands and oversees what the entire there's no unified interpretation of the platform. So in this process, I wanted to give you what my lessons learned and takeaways are. Up until now, most of my talk has been on technical information, but what I learned in the 6 months implementation project is that it requires a strong understanding of the data and capabilities and technology, but also requires strong business relationships with internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. And sometimes you're in the middle. You've got to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And since I work at Biogen, we have a lot of strong scientists. And something I learned important to me is that scientists and technologists think very differently. So as a technologist, we're more focused on the process, we're more focused on the end result, whereas with the scientists, they're more focused on one problem, and precision is very important to them. So for example, we're developing this internal structure for modality, and the modality, it's not a black and white problem in that the data structure is one-dimensional, but you have to create this multi-dimensional data structure that accommodates for all different ways that a scientist can interpret and accommodate their definitions of modality. So it's two very different ways of thinking, and to develop a technology platform that satisfies the scientist requirement requires a lot of going back and forth and really having a strong understanding of the science as well. I was inspired by this article by Harvard Business Review, Why Data Scientists Need Generalists, Not Specialists. I will disagree with that. I think that data science teams need both generalists and specialists. One needs generalists in order to oversee to understand the business problem, to deal with the data quality issues, but also the specialists in that you do need experts with the AI and machine learning background and the software engineers who can execute the technical requirements. And finally, there is a distinction between what is a data problem and a capability problem. So when we started this project, we really didn't foresee that data harmonization from the competitive intelligence databases was going to be a problem. So it's increasing demand for the data sources. We need to create a common ontology or lexicon. So all the competitive intelligence sources have their own ontologies. And then we kind of reached, when we were midway through this process and we didn't know, okay, well, do we create a common ontology ourselves, or do we rely on the capability team to do it, or do we do it ourselves? And you need to resolve the data harmonization problem before you can apply the capabilities on that problem to build your technology platform. Also, the data access is also a problem, because when we were signing the third-party agreements with Clarivate and Informa, they had the fine print in which you can only use this much data, or you can't use the data for AI machine learning. So even if you have access to a database, you are kind of limited in your terms and conditions on what you can use the data for. And I'll end on the capability problems. So not all types of data are suitable for AI and machine learning. Some of your questions are not necessarily you don't necessarily need AI to answer your questions, and sometimes simple descriptive analytics in the form of a bubble plot or a heat map in different functional sections may be sufficient enough to answer your question. And finally, being on the business and technology side, I think that, this is like being blinded and trying to feel out what the elephant is. From the technology side, we do need to understand the business, and in this case, we do need to have a strong understanding of the science in order to deliver a platform that meets their needs. And from the business side, doing data science should not be a black box. Stakeholders unfamiliar or unenlightened by data should be well informed of the data's value proposition. Comments and questions? Thank you very much.
If you'd like to answer a question, we have time for one.
Okay. Biogen uses data, but beyond steering your initial engagement with external companies, how do you rate performance of third-party tech in your model? Currently, we use the platform. Like we had a proof of concept about a month ago, and we use this more also just to explore different kinds of companies that we can engage with. How do we rate the performance of a third-party tech in your model? So I think this is a question regarding the vendor. They built the platform based off of our needs. So the performance of the third-party tech actually comes back to how well we capture the business requirements and then pass it off to the third-party tech. So it's because this wasn't an off-the-shelf product. This was something that we built with them. So it's really what we make of it. Is there a really correlation between number of publications and ROI on the external engagement? Good question. The number of publications, in addition to the number of patents, in addition to the clinical trials and the funding. So we don't look at publications, but we also look at, we have this diagram in which that shows the number of publications, patents, clinical trials, and funding all plotted on one diagram. So the return on investment, it depends on other factors, like if the key opinion leader is an established person in a topic area. So we'll have to see. All right, thank you.
All right, it's time for lunch, and we'll be back here in 1 hour at 1:35 for our panel. Thank you.